I am joined today by James, who is going to be doing the technical coaching on our Tier 4 program, and also by Laura and Chris from Street Group. Hello. We're going to be doing like a little bit more of a Q&A towards the end of the webinar, so you'll get to learn a lot more about Street Group, what they do, what the roles are with them, and you'll also be able to ask any questions. For now, if you can drop in the chat a hello, maybe let us know where you're connecting from today, and we're going to get started. So hi to everyone that's already said hello in the chat. Lovely Bolton, I see. Beautiful. All right. So because we've been a couple minutes late, I will definitely make sure we get started. So today we're going to be covering just a little bit more about tech returners. If it is the first time that you are hearing about us, we'll talk a little bit more about why the Tier 4 program exists and a lot more about the details of the program itself. We'll also talk about something very exciting, which is a £2,000 bursary, which is not something we've ever done before. And as I mentioned, you'll have a chance to hear much more about Street Group and what they offer. At the end, I'll also cover a little bit more about applications. If you're interested, if you want to apply, how you can do that in the best possible way. So for those of you that are new to Tech Returners, the organization was set up in 2017 by James, who is here alongside Becky, with the mission to remove the barriers that people face when they were trying to come to tech or come back into tech after a career break. And through our range of different programs that we have delivered over the years, we have helped people to reignite their careers and come back to doing what they love, which is tech. A little bit more detail, as I said, 2017, the company was founded and there were a couple of trial cohorts with organizations like AO, AutoTrader, and Think Money. 2018 and 2019 saw us launching the Your Journey into Tech, which was a program to help people get into the tech industry. And there were partnerships with companies such as AutoTrader and Infinity Works. There was also a trial cohort with the BBC to help increase their diversity in the tech teams. In 2020, this is where a version of the program that was our award-winning program, the Your Return to Tech, started. And at first, we worked with companies such as Xero, AO, Nando's, BS Systems, and also The Guardian, Booking, The Telegraph, and many more, honestly. We've supported a couple of hundred returners through those programs, and it's been a program that has had a massive success. In 2023, at the beginning of the year, we were acquired by the North Coders Group, and we changed the name of the program from Your Return to Tech to simply the Tech Returners Program, because that's how everyone was calling it anyway. And we partnered with companies such as Casing Direct and Be Digital Intelligence to, again, help increase the diversity in their teams. We also, because we were now part of North Coders, we were able to offer Department for Education funded programs, and that also allowed us to reach different people. In 2024, we have just launched our new program, the Tier 4 program, and that basically supports returners to return to tech in a much quicker and more inclusive way. So you'll hear a bit more about that program in a second. So in the past, if you've been part of our programs, or if maybe you had a friend who's been part of our programs, you may have heard them talking about, oh, like we were a big cohort of like 15 people, 6 or 10 of us got hired for this company and so on. So it was very much an absolute program. You may have heard from people that have been on our programs last year. So those were our Department for Education fully funded programs, where we had even bigger groups of up to 24 engineers. And returners were basically, since there wasn't a hiring partner at the end, we were upskilling them to prepare for interviews and go and find and identify their own opportunities. So those were the programs that we have run in the last couple of years. And a lot of things worked really well. So whenever we work with a hiring partner, we were always able to achieve the hiring numbers and a very high retention. So people were in the role 6 months or a year after they acquired the job. So that's very much a high retention. We also pride ourselves on our inclusive recruitment processes, especially tailored towards returners. And we managed to create diverse cohorts with people still like being friends 2 or 3 years after the program has finished. And we've supported people with very short breaks from like 6 months onwards, all the way. I think the longest one I've seen was 19 years, and we successfully helped that person return into tech, and now they're still in the position a year after. What I'm personally very proud of is that through going through the career and mindset content, 92% of returners actually reported that they've increased their confidence and they feel confident going to interviews and being in the workplace, which I think is also very important. So all of that worked. However, there were a couple of challenges that we also faced. So if you follow any news, you must have heard about the big tech layoffs from the big five companies in the tech sector, 2022, 2023. And even though those are mostly in the States, they kind of trickled down across the world and impacted the tech industry as a whole. And so even though 2024 is now projected to be much more of a recovery year, we're still dealing with some of the consequences from the last 2 years. And that included things like we found it harder to kind of get budget sign-offs for 10 to 12 people. A lot of companies were implementing hiring freezes at the moment because they weren't sure how many people they're going to need. We also found it a little bit challenging to place returners, again, due to those hiring freezes. And for companies, it was much more of a lengthy process because our programs were 3 to 4 months long on top of the recruitment, and that kind of made up 6, 7 months. So it was quite a lengthy process. Also, the length of the program meant that a returner would have to kind of self-finance for up to 3, 4 months. And that is a big ask sometimes for people that may have not been at work for that amount of time. And so at the end of last year, we kind of like took stock and reflected on how the year's been, what's been the successes and challenges. And we listen to the market because there is no point offering something that the market doesn't want. And so we adapted how we support experienced and diverse engineers like yourselves to re-enter the tech industry. And we came up with a new solution, which is the TR4 program. Basically, we took the best, what was working from our past programs, and combine them with a new model that is, I believe, much more suitable for the tech market as it is right now, and how we can support both you as engineers, but also hiring partners such as Street Group. So how the program works really is that each month we will partner with 2 companies. And so for June, one of our hiring partners is Street Group. So their goal is to hire 2 skilled software engineers that with our support will be ready to return to tech at the end of June. So we are already collaborating with their team, and we've asked a lot about their hiring criteria, hiring processes, and really trying to understand what exactly they need so that we can find that amongst our talent pipeline. And so we want to make sure that we are finding the best fit for both sides. Then on the actual program for 4 weeks, the successful returners will receive career and mindset support alongside technical support to kind of upskill and refresh themselves in the technical stack of Street Group. And post-program, they will be seamlessly integrated into Street's team, ready to make an impact from day one. So if that sounds great, how do you know if this is the right fit for you? Well, first of all, this program is for you if you've had a career break or you've been impacted by technical layoffs. And I think that's important because if you're someone who's just graduated, you have a different way to enter the tech industry. So this program is specifically tailored for people who are returners or people who have been impacted by those tech layoffs that we mentioned earlier. This program is right for you as well if you've been actively upskilling in the meantime, and that can look in a variety of different ways, whether it's courses or personal projects or having a mentor or taking like another boot camp to kind of refresh your skills. We don't really care how you've done it. All we care about is that you've actually committed to your personal and professional development during your career break in some way, shape, or form. This program is for you if you're self-aware and you're motivated to return to tech right now. And if you're someone who genuinely asks for feedback, but also takes that feedback and implements it and learn from that as well. Now, on the other hand, this might not be the right program for you if you've had a very, very long career break. We're talking like 6+ years and you haven't yet done anything to refresh your skills yet. It doesn't mean you'll never be the right fit, but it might not be the right fit right now because the program is really focused on taking people who've already been doing stuff and kind of taking them to that next level. We are not going to be teaching you the basics of, let's say, PHP and so on, right? This is something that you can do on your own. If you're on the fence, it's like, oh, is this the right time? I'm not sure. Again, that might not be the right fit for you at the moment. If you're someone who has no commercial experience in tech, again, there are other like graduate routes. This is not the program for you. If you're someone who purely wants to develop technically but doesn't care about mindset, again, it's not necessarily the right fit because I know from Street they're really passionate about people developing themselves, not just technically, but like professionally as well. Or if you're someone that doesn't ask for feedback or doesn't value it, there's going to be a lot of feedback on the program. And so it's important that you ask for that, but also take it on board as well. And from having helped probably over 200 returners by now, what I've noticed is that our most successful returners are those that are ready to go all in and commit themselves for, let's say, those 4 weeks. These are the people that get the best results from our programs. So I will hand over to James, who's going to tell you a little bit more about the program details, kind of like what you can expect as well.
Cool. Thanks, Millie, and hello, everyone. Yeah, so in terms of a little bit of background around the people that will be working with you on the program. So it's actually myself and Millie working on the program. My background, I've been in the tech industry, as it says there, around 17 years, moved through various roles. Initially started as a software engineer and moved into kind of technical leadership roles, head of development, around that aspect. Moved on to DevOps consultancy for government level organisation. And co-organised a meetup in Manchester called DevOps Manchester. And in more recent times, as Millie's just covered, co-founded Tech Returners, their CTO. And it's myself that will be working with you on the technical aspects of the curriculum as we develop you over the 4 weeks. Millie, did you want to do a little short aspect of yours now, or to go into it in a moment?
That's absolutely fine. I'll do it a bit later.
Well, so we move on. So in terms of the actual program itself and curriculum, it's all remotely delivered like this over Zoom in a meeting format. And there are sessions that we'll run, Zoom sessions around different topics that are aligned to what the Street Group are looking for, and then also individual. Because the numbers are smaller in terms of the program numbers, we can focus really in on an individual level. So you can see there that first bullet point, the one-to-one calls. It means we can actually focus in. Maybe there's a particular area of the Street Group technical stack that you're really strong with, and there's a bit of an area that maybe needs a bit of development, and we can focus in on that on an individual level, ready for the role. All the materials will be shared with you, so you get access to all the kind of Google Classroom materials, and you get kind of maintained access to that. And as it mentions there, starting to build out that community, there's a dedicated Slack cohort channel for you to share ideas and help each other as you're on that program. I mentioned it a bit a moment ago, there's that individual support, and that's from both a technical standpoint, like I just gave that example, but also really important to us is the career and mindset, and Millie will cover a little bit around that. And I guess there's another promise from us that our feedback will always provide that is clear to you around aspects you can develop on, but also aspects that you're doing really well and how you can leverage that, and making that clear and actionable for you on your time with us. So a little bit around timing so that you know what kind of time to accommodate for. The sessions and calls will fall between 10 a.m. in the morning and 3 p.m. We kind of pick those times just in case there's any kind of caring responsibilities. One thing I want to point out around that is that you're not going to be in a Zoom call from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. We definitely wouldn't inflict that onto you. But it's just that if we do a session, we might do a session at 10 and then the rest of the day is yours. And we might schedule, say, on an individual level, a bit later on a one-to-one with you. But you can expect that any sessions fall between those times, but you're certainly not going to be on a Zoom call. Mentioned it a few times, it's a combination of technical skills and then career and mindset skills, and that career skills align to some of the things that Millie hears from Street Group and kind of the type of person and how we operate within Street Group. And it will be busy. Now, it says there 30 to 35 hours per week. Really, again, like I said, you're not going to be on Zoom all that time, but you will get out what you put in. So there'll be projects kind of coming on to that last area there, that asynchronous work that we give you to work on, and you'll get out what you put into those projects. So, if you're in your mind, commit that amount of time, it means you can really get to grips with the project and really push your knowledge and develop yourself because you're committing that amount of time to your own development. When you do those projects, we understand that everybody has different time schedules, right? We know that the sessions might fall between 10 and 3, but when you do those projects, it's entirely up to you. You might say, look, for me, I tend to be more productive in the evening. I'm going to work in the evenings and do that. Or you might say I'm more of a morning person. When you do those, it's entirely up to you how you do those projects. But we put that kind of time there really just to indicate, I've said it a few times, you get out what you put into the program. So if you commit that amount of time, you'll get a great outcome. I'll talk a little bit about kind of specifics then of each of the 4 weeks. Do you want to? Yeah, thanks for that. So in each of the 4 weeks. So first, week 1 is kind of individual focused development analysis. So if we look at Street Group and what they need from their engineers, technical stacks, and align that to your past experiences, are there any areas there that we can amplify because they're really directly aligned to what the Street Group use in terms of technical stacks? So let's amplify that. And then also any areas that we can develop on. So for example, you might be really comfortable with, say, PHP, a Laravel framework, and then actually there maybe is a little bit of deployment activities that are gaps, and we maybe explore aspects around that. So there's the individual focus, and we finish off the week with a group tech task, which is really building up our skills again in a group, breaking down a bigger problem, specifying things, and trying to get to grips with what the user needs are. Week 2, we're focusing in on your personal progression. So we've done that development analysis. Let's now look at an individual technical project for you to work through and build on and develop in those areas we've identified, and then provide feedback on that. And then week 3 focuses right in on Street Group. So we're going to talk about technical task preparation, technical interview preparation. And then week 4 is where we're kind of, okay, we're now transitioning into a group. We're moving into a group and we're working on a group technical project like you will do when you transition back into the organization and into Street Group. Over to you, Mila.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, James, for providing a lot more detail around the technical side of the program. And like you mentioned, the program is a combination of technical tasks, but also career and mindset support and like supporting you with your confidence. So in the first week, really, I want to make sure that you're on the same page, kind of, you know, what's required of you. And we do kind of a developmental analysis. So you can select what you want to develop on during your time on the program. We'll also introduce you to Street Group and kind of like who they are as a company, so that you start to understand their values and how you can seamlessly kind of integrate into them. Week 2 will be much more around sharing your returner story with confidence, and you will practice your presentation skills as well. And you'll hear more from Street around what the day of life of an engineer actually looks like, so you know kind of what to expect during your time there. Week 3 is going to focus much more on what value you bring as a returner and kind of how to contribute to your new team with the skills you have both from your past career, but also any of the transferable skills you've developed. And again, we'll practice that in a more of a group setting. And week 4 is very much focused on preparing you to get back into work. So whether that looks like having a mock interview, so you can then have a very comfortable conversation with Street at the end of the program, or that may look like a one-to-one conversation to cover any sort of challenges, concerns you may have about returning to tech. All of that is going to be covered in that week 4. And in terms of like who am I to be teaching all of this, I didn't do a proper introduction, but I have 5 years of experience in coaching people on topics around confidence, career, mindset, and business. And I think over the past 2.5 years, I've helped over 200 returners on 14 programs. And I'm really, really passionate about making personal development accessible to everyone, whether you're someone who is really into that or whether you're someone who's brand new to that. I want to speak kind of on your level and make it fun, accessible, and helpful to you as well. So, something that I mentioned at the beginning that we've never really done before, but I think is going to be a massive value add to you as a returner, is that we have introduced our returner bursary. So basically, for the 2 people selected to be on the program, each of you is going to receive a £2,000 bursary to support you with any sort of cost of living, childcare, or any other expenses that you may have like while being on this program. And so we want to keep our roots into tech accessible, and that is why this bursary exists. And I'm really, really excited for everyone who joins us on the program. Now, in terms of commitment, I think that being on the program is kind of a two-way relationship, and so we commit to certain things and we are looking for your commitment as well. So from our perspective, we commit to giving you a free program. You're not paying anything for it. In fact, you are actually getting a £2,000 bursary to be here. And we promise to develop and upskill you based on your own individual needs. We also kind of promise to support you and commit to supporting you with any sort of technical behavioral interviews that you may need as part of this program, as part of your application to Street Group. What we ask for in exchange is that you complete the full program. And as James mentioned, it is 30 to 35 hours. Not all of it is live, but you need to put in the time to really prepare. We ask you to go through all interview stages, whether that is throughout the program or at the end of the program, and to not apply for any other roles during the program, and to engage with Street's team when you meet them, whether that is in person, whether that is meeting their engineers, asking questions, just kind of like being engaged, because we want to find a perfect fit, and that is really, really important. So if you have any questions of anything we haven't really mentioned yet, you can drop them in the chat, or you can drop them in the Q&A box. There is a button at the bottom. So again, I already see some people have dropped questions, so please keep them coming and we'll answer all of that at the end. Now, I'll let James actually tell you a little bit more about Street Group, and also we'll hear a bit more about from Laura and Chris about Street and what the roles entail.
Yeah, Bill, and it kind of we've had a question in already around kind of some of these aspects. So like you said, Millie, the questions that come in, we might answer some of these, but we've got a Q&A as well. So yeah, in terms of this particular partner, working with Street Group, you'll hear from Chris and Laura in a moment, and they'll paint a much more detailed picture around the Street Group. So please do that for us both. In terms of the software you work on, I've seen one that comes in around it being PHP. It is a PHP program, and that is the technology stack over at Street Group. And as that slide mentions there are 2 roles available within Street Group. On the program, so this program, the way it works, Millie outlined it a little bit for that question that has already come in. There'll be 2 people on the program, and that's the 2 people that Street Group, all things being well, want to hire. So it's not like previous programs where we might have 10 people on the program and then only 2 get hired, or that kind of approach. It's actually the 2 people that join the program ultimately, all things being well, are the two people that Chris and Laura are looking to hire. So we actually do a selection process that kind of we'll cover around that. So yeah, there's two roles available with Street Group, as the slide indicates. Street Group offer hybrid and working and flexible hours around how their teams operate. And again, the team will talk about that in a minute. There's a £500 yearly L&D budget you can see for your career development. And I didn't know about this one, actually. This is a new one, the holiday one. So there's also that kind of perk there. So I'll let the team detail that a little bit. So we've got a bit of time now to, rather than me explain Street Group, to hear from Chris and Laura. So I think first things first, Laura, do you want to introduce yourself and what you do at Street Group, and then we'll go over to Chris after yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So yeah, just to introduce myself quickly. So I'm Laura. I'm head of people at Street Group. I joined about just 4.5 years ago. It was like March 2020, just before COVID hit. So I was brought in to double the team, and then we sort of immediately went into a hiring freeze because of the pandemic. So kind of switched focus and was, looking after people's well-being during this very unusual time that we went through. And yeah, since then I've kind of, grown the scope. We've grown the team fairly dramatically. Like I think I was employee number 33 and we're now almost 133. So yeah, it's grown a lot. So now sort of have a small team. They're doing all of the hands-on hiring, and then sort of, we also look after people once they're here. So making sure there's, opportunities for progression, making sure everybody's getting a salary review every year, very important. And yeah, basically all people initiatives. So yeah, that is a quick intro to me. Prior to this, worked in talent acquisition for about sort of 8 years prior, and yeah, did all sorts, but I've been always focused on tech, so that's what I'm very passionate about. Yeah, that's me.
Thanks, Laura. So that's a big amount of growth. So you've been busy in terms of the people development age, and I guess with that journey as well, you're developing the people side of things as well, aren't we? So yeah, and over to yourself, Chris.
Yeah, so I'm Chris. I'm head of engineering at Street Group. So essentially, I look after the technical teams that build our products. So I've been here about 3 years, not quite as long as Laura, employee number 50, but sort of similar scaling fun. So yeah, I kind of make sure we're building things to a high quality. We have the tools that the teams need. We're supporting engineers in terms of kind of like how they progress in their careers, what they need, mentoring some of our team leads. Just essentially kind of making sure the technology teams are as high performing, as happy as they can be. Before this, I've worked in lots of industries. I worked at Canal was my first job. I've been in like fashion e-commerce and retail, new to prop tech, but I've really enjoyed it the last 3 years, kind of learning the industry and growing the teams, working with a lot of Laura over that 3 years.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for the intro as well. So I'll start, and we can say things. We've done the slides at the start, but I guess the first question to yourself, Laura, is why? Why get involved with this kind of initiative? Why are Street Group here looking to hire 2 people?
Yeah, so for me, it's oh gosh, me and Chris are in the same room, a very long room. So there's a bit of echo. Also, I didn't mention this, but I meant to. The light is like motion censored, so it's gone off and on a couple of times already. So if you've seen that or you've noticed that, apologies. So yeah, so I think like for me, I've got sort of like a personal interest in it. So I sort of like returned to tech myself after my maternity leave. I was only out of the workforce for like 9 months, and I came back into this same job that I'm in now. But it was so jarring, like I say, the company had grown loads, my team had grown while I was away, so I was kind of like the new person within, my own sort of like little team and little department. So yeah, it was a very sort of like jarring experience. So I appreciate that it is quite difficult, like returning to tech. I've like worked with tech returners in the past. So I think it was in 2020 or 2021, we partnered then for the first time. And I also know Becky, who's the other founder of Tech Returners. So I did one of her confidence courses when I was returning to work, because my confidence was just like, it had gone like that. So yeah, you know, I was like struggling, but I wanted to return to work. But I think like, you know, I know that just because I was struggling and it was a bit of a journey, it didn't mean, you know, I was any less driven, I was any less motivated, I was any less like passionate about what I do, you know, anything like that. And I know there are people out there who feel the same way, and it can be a little bit daunting getting back into work. But you know, I think like we have the right environment here to, you know, support returners. Like we're very, very supportive overall as a company. Like there's so much buy-in, you know, like Chris is like, you know, really sort of like supportive with things like this. Our co-founders are really bought in, you know, I am really bought in as well. So I think like it's a good environment for returners to come into because, you know, the support is there. So yeah, I think that's probably why we've got involved. I hope that.
Yeah, that connection to your own journey as well. I think that's important because you understand what other people might experience and that kind of loss of network and like you said, your skills are still there. It's just building up that network. And there's a time when it's right for the organization as well, isn't there? That you kind of talked about there. It's like, right, at this stage, maybe not yet. Kind of it's a not never, but it's a not yet. But then when you get to a stage where you go, do you know what? Actually, I think this is now something that we feel we can give, your street group feel we can give the best support to the people returning. So yeah, thanks for that. Chris, street group, what does the organization do? What can the people on call, if successful, expect?
So yeah, so our mission is essentially to transform and improve how people buy and sell property in the UK, which is woolly, but I'll go into detail. So kind of our main customer estate agents, we build essentially really good technology for estate agencies, but also consumers. So if you're buying or selling a house or renting, we've got apps, kind of web apps as well as mobile that you can use to manage that process. Much more transparent than the kind of traditional phone call based things. We have two main products. We have a marketing called Spectre and a CRM, although a CRM is probably underselling it a little bit, called Street, which essentially runs the entire operations day-to-day of a estate agency. We've got a really strong data team as well. So they kind of sit under the main products we do and underpin lots of things, including kind of like gathering data, some really good like ML models and things like that. We have some products based on the back of that as well. So we have an API product and Tool Insights. And it's traditionally quite like an underserved industry by technology. So it's a real kind of chance to improve the technology that's in agent hands. It's quite a stressful experience moving house if anyone's done it in recent times. So actually being able to like have technology that makes that a much more pleasant experience, much more transparent experience, as well as kind of improving the agency side of things. Generally people, I'm quite biased to say this, but people tend to love our products as well. We've got numerous awards that have been purely based off customer reviews. So not just kind of like a, you know, here's a slap on the back, here's a reward sort of thing. They've been directly voted for by users in the industry. So yeah, we tend to build high quality stuff that people tend to love. Again, biased, but that's my take on it.
And so you should be, exactly, because in the typical remote world, I've got people knocking at my door right now as well. No, thank you. You should be biased about it though, because that's, you know, the technology, and it has transformed that marketplace as well. You know, because I know when we've spoke, you've had competitors trying to kind of steal areas of your innovation, you know. What impact can people have through their work, Chris, at Street? What kind of impact do you see them kind of taking place on?
Yeah, like so, it's an industry that's kind of really traditionally underserved by technology. It's kind of lots of old school servers under desk sort of approaches to things. It's been, I think, one of the few industries that's not really been, I know people use the word disrupted quite a lot, but hasn't been disrupted by technology to the extent other ones have, because like hotel booking or kind of like taxis and stuff. These are traditional industries that have kind of had a lot of technology come in and do stuff, whereas the prop tech industry is still quite how it used to be a while back. It's a real opportunity to kind of make that area of life for a lot of people better. Kind of how we buy and sell houses is like I said, a really stressful time in people's lives. A lot of that stress on agents as well, like under huge pressure. Traditional tools don't let them do a lot of efficient stuff. So the stat we always use is to organize one viewing. That's normally about 7 different phone calls, which is kind of, you know, 3 different people trying to organize, kind of getting the buyer, the viewer, the agent in place. We can do things to automate that entire journey, make that kind of happen out of hours, find the best lot for people. That's just one aspect of what we do. So we can make it a real difference to the technology in terms of how efficient agents can be, the experience that you get from a buyer seller. But yeah, in terms of the impact internally as well, we're growing rapidly, as Laura mentioned. So there's a real chance to help a growing business scale, whether that's with technology, whether that's like the actual team structure, whether that's progression for yourself. I think out of the 8 like tech leads we have in our business, 6 of them progressed internally. So we have a lot of people who've kind of moved up into roles. I joined as a tech lead originally. Most of our progression happens kind of on an internal basis. So we're really, really keen as we scale and grow. Gaps appear where people can progress into, new opportunities appear as we do new stuff. So there's a chance to improve the industry that exists, and also look at a growing company and really drive stuff forward in terms of new opportunities, new technology. Yeah.
And that connection to progression for people is an important one, isn't it? Because you want to see yourself, and we see this with returners, of they'll want to retain in a role. You know, if you find your organization that you match with, and that's what this process is about, you kind of want to stay there, and to know, but also know that there's a progression route in there, and that the kind of growth you've experienced has facilitated that for engineers. And I guess as well, I suspect there's people on the call that have bought houses, or with people experiencing that connection to a consumer and their experience with, with that industry, and trying to transform that from a consumer level as well, and their experience with estate agents and things like that. That's, that real impact. Laura, we've seen some of the benefits, so do a better job than I did around highlighting some of those for me. And what's the company culture like at Street? What kind of environment it's like?
I think like culture is kind of one of the things that people say is like the best thing about working here. We survey employees fairly regularly, and sort of like, it's one of the top things that comes up like time and time again. I think like, first thing is it's a very, very open and transparent company. Like, it is one of our values, but like we genuinely are like super open. So every Friday we have a company all hands, like every single team gives an update on what they've been working on. Our co-founders give business updates. So like an example is that we bought this office building, sort of like 2021, maybe, I think it was. And it was kind of like every step, we were all informed about it. So it was like, oh, like our current like landlord is putting the building up for sale, just FYI, that's going on. Then it was like, oh, everyone were like considering potentially like buying the building. Then it was like, oh, we've been, in touch with like banks and so on about mortgages. But it was like literally like and it's like that about everything, the company financials, like absolutely anything and everything. It's so transparent. I think like as well, what I mentioned earlier, it's extremely supportive and just like a genuinely nice place to work. Like, it came up in one of the it might have been a new starter onboarding questionnaire or something, but it was like I've never had anyone that I've asked for help with something and they've like said no. Like, anyone is just genuinely like happy to help at all times. So yeah, I think that's really, really nice. And then I'd also put like, fast-paced, very innovative. We're definitely not a big corporate, or a big bureaucracy with like loads of hoops to jump through, or like, loads of levels of approval for things or anything like that. We sort of like think it's better to test things, to get things done, and then if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. It's like, so be it. We'll like learn something, and then like we'll take that and do better next time, kind of thing. And because we've got that approach throughout the whole company, it's very much like a no blame culture. I think like Chris might touch on that himself, but yeah, it's like we have that kind of like, we're all in it together. And I think that's like the last thing I'd say. I think we are kind of all on the same page about what we're trying to do and what we're trying to push towards, and we're sort of like all on that same like team, and we've got that mentality of we are all in it together. We know what we're striving for. So everybody just like works super hard and is really passionate about what they do. So yeah, and obviously the benefits are great as well. We also like, we do, like I said, about like surveying employees and listening to them like all the time and trying to make changes. So we've just done our benefits review for 2024. So we're now in the process of kind of looking at that and seeing if there's anything, we're going to be rolling out. So yeah, but the £1,000 holiday is great. You get that on year 1, and then like every 3 years after that. So I just hit year 4, so I got to get it again. So woohoo! But yeah, it's a really good place to work. I would, obviously, I'm like really biased, right? I would say that, but like genuinely for me, I don't see myself leaving. I just really enjoy working here.
And some of the things you said there, like the non-blame culture, and kind of those kind of aspects. They're relatively easy to say, and they're a lot harder to achieve in practice, aren't they? And a lot of it is the intangible stuff. It's how we operate, how we conduct ourselves, and being that supportive of a new starter, so that they know then later on when they've got an idea, they'll bring it forward, because the thing they've experienced during their onboarding and joining the organisations kind of said, actually, I can speak up here and say, what about this idea? And those kind of things. And you talked around that, and we hear it from organisations, don't we? That kind of fast pace, but there is a change. I think it's worth pointing out from the initial calls we've done. It might be that there is a certain direction, and then some new information comes out, and the software teams have to kind of pivot and change, and that kind of, I guess, helping the people on the call, that kind of ability and responsiveness to change is a key part of kind of what makes a good engineer at Street. Talking about good engineers at Street, Chris, do you want to talk about the actual roles themselves, maybe a bit about the kind of products they might go into specifically? You talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, so obviously we're kind of hiring constantly at the moment. I think over 3 years I've been here, we've gone from about 15 engineers to about 55 now. So we've not got a direct kind of mapping to the roles at this point yet, because obviously things change over the months. But I think it'll obviously be, there's the main two products in terms of threat protection of Street. We have multiple teams in those areas. There's only kind of maybe 1 or 2 teams where we wouldn't place a returner, just in terms of like the domain being really kind of specific. Yeah. But we tend to kind of build teams in a similar pattern regardless of the product area. So we kind of organize into teams of about 4 or 5 devs, product and UX, and generally focus on a particular area of the business. It might be, for example, the agent side of the CRM, or the platform side of Spectre, or kind of our insights team. So that it's rather than being like across the business, you have a specific area of focus where you can have a real ownership of that. It's not kind of like, this massive context holding your head of the entire business. You're working on one area of the product and make it better over time. And we want teams that have like clear ownership, high autonomy, high trust. That's what I said. So it's you can really kind of learn that area and come forward with ideas, build new stuff, innovate, as well as obviously operating and running the stuff that makes it successful. We have got kind of a big bias towards action rather than kind of waiting around and planning. I think it's fair to say we move really quickly. So I think last year on average we deployed about 35 times per day across all the teams. So we're making changes constantly, and it's not about like typing faster or working long hours or kind of like crunch time. It's about making decisions quickly, and about, if we're going to do something, rather than kind of spending 2 months planning it out and doing that, we'll do enough planning so we can try something, test it, build it, learn, and then iterate. There's a lot to talk about kind of like doing agile versus being agile and the different types of it. I think the main thing for us is being able to respond and react to change, and to learn and adapt, and that's massively important to us. Laura mentioned kind of like high trust, low blame culture. It's really important to me that we have teams that have high psychological safety. So teams that can take risks, make mistakes, that don't get kind of fingers pointed. So we've had, we make mistakes, things go wrong. We've had outages where have happened where someone's done something that was slightly foolish, but we always kind of dive into why that is, what's happened, what's that happened, and rather than it being an individual mistake or problem, we always look at the structures and how things operate. So yeah, it's kind of really important to me that we have teams that have the autonomousness. And if you want autonomous teams, you have to give them trust, and you have to make it a safe environment to take risks. Otherwise, you just tell them what to do and they lose the autonomy. It's really important for me as well as we scale, that we don't lose that ability, that as we add new teams and new people, that the process doesn't grow for the sake of it, that we have like just enough to make sure it's working well, but not adding process for the sake of it. And we keep that agility. So yeah, I think tech-wise, like I mentioned, it is kind of like the PHP Laravel stack, quite a bit of Vue. We also own and operate all our own infrastructure on AWS. So if you want to get stuck into more DevOps stuff, pipeline things, we own and run those. There's a real chance to kind of like dive into lots of different stuff. We're quite generalist at the moment, although we are getting more specialisms appear over time. But it means that if you want to do a bit of front-end optimization, then maybe some service design, and then get into the UX side of things, or do some infrastructure stuff in AWS and Terraform, then you can kind of direct where you want to be. We don't have silos of like, no, your job is front-end, you can't go near the infrastructure. And if you want to get stuck into something, go for it. If you want some training to make that happen, go for it. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks, Chris. So we did have questions in. We'll come to questions as well, but just for the people on the stack, yeah, the stack is PHP, Laravel, Vue on the front end in terms of the application code, because I know people will be listening out for this stuff. It's AWS in terms of cloud, and we, a person inquired that they were cloud background. So those kind of applications, I guess we're kind of saying apply and let us review it, rather than ruling yourself out at this stage. If you've not got a particular tick box on that card that we've just talked about.
I would say we're not dogmatic about technology. So we have got some services in Golang. We've done some stuff in Node where it makes sense. We just kind of default to our stack that we know. So if there's a use case for another technology, or if there's a reason why we should use certain things, as long as it's a good reason to use it rather than just it looks like a fun language, then we're always open to kind of new options and whatnot. So
yeah, got it. So you've heard about my technical decision-making process. So final bits, I guess, all things, we've gone great. We've got 2 people on the program. They're now entering careers with re-entering careers with Street Group. Laura, from yourself, from a people standpoint, what support do they receive? And then we'll go on to Chris, and then kind of on role standpoint. So Laura, what kind of support development areas will we receive in those first bits?
Yeah, I think there's various different bits. Chris will probably touch on the more engineering specific ones, but obviously, like I said, it's a supportive culture. I think that's important to note straight of all. We have so many engineers now. I think it was did you say it was 55, Chris? So, if you're struggling with anything, any area, there'll be someone who is good at that, because everybody's talented in different things, and everyone is willing to help. So there would be that sort of one-on-one kind of buddy or mentor support there. We have our L&D budget, so you can spend that on whatever you want that's relevant to your development. So it's £500 a year, but what we say is if there's anything that goes over that, we'd approve it on a case-by-case basis. So when I came in, I did a course, and we didn't have that knowledge in the business, but for my team and my function, we needed it, and that was £2,000. So it got signed off because it was necessary. So we do that. It's not just something we say. So that's there. Chris has been working on progression levels, so that we've got a framework in place for it's very, very clear. Here's what you need to do to get to the next step of your career. And then I think obviously we've got some very talented tech leads, and Chris as well, very good at his job. Sorry, Chris, make you blush there. So there's so much support internally, but I think the culture is a big one. You would never sit and struggle with someone. There would always be somebody there to help.
Yeah. And for myself, Chris. Yeah, on the role.
I think obviously a lot of what Laura said with the flexibility around L&D and the budget. I spent my budget last year in a mental health first aid course, which isn't necessarily tech related, but was really helpful for me. We have kind of a lot of lunches and learns in terms of soft skills, and we've had people talk about public speaking, about growth mindset stuff. But we've had Amazon come down to do talks about AI and intros to AWS. We do a 2-week. Sorry, flies. We do a 2-weekly. Each team is a knowledge chapter session where we're kind of sharing knowledge between stuff. We have ad hoc, some last week today, session on debuggers and how to kind of be efficient with them. And that was just a bit of a off their own back. It wasn't a, hey, can we run this? They were self-organized. I think one of my favorite stories with L&D is one of the teams at one point, someone with a spreadsheet together of here's all the things I don't feel confident about in terms of day-to-day. Can anyone help with these? And rather than being God, you're not a big job, the entire team went, oh, I'm not good at that, and self marked all the areas where they weren't good at, then organised a bunch of training sessions to kind of go through those without anyone being involved. No one kind of went, hey, you should do this. They're self-organised to go, we've got some gaps. Let's maybe work out how to cross skill, and that's then turned into a more ongoing thing. So both from the teams running it and us running it, I think it's a really strong learning culture. And we also do a yearly internal conference, so we've had external speakers come down for that as well as internal. We've done 3 of those now, I think. And that's sort of end of year. Someone was in Jan this year. And they're really good fun. It's just we spend the entire day talking about various technology bits, what we're going to do, what areas we can learn. Someone did a talk on everything from event sourcing. Someone did a talk on just Mac tips and tricks, which is actually really helpful. I learned a bunch of stuff. So yeah, it's something that we're really keen on. And like Laura said, it's rare we say no to L&D. It's a good reason for it. If there's something you want to do, if there's a course you want to look over, or just want to drive forward. We've got people on the ECR, an ACS course, a workshop half day tomorrow. As long as we balance it around sort of our general commitments around work, then it's a really positive thing.
Yeah, amazing. And it kind of manifested itself, didn't it, with that feedback that you got from a recent onboarder around they could ask anybody questions. You know, that's for somebody that's returning to work, that's kind of the environment you want to go into. And that the things you highlighted there, that could surround somebody filling out a spreadsheet and saying these are areas, and then the opportunity that then gives other people to say, do you know what, actually, I can reinforce something of my own skills because I feel okay with that particular area to support somebody else. The reinforcement that takes place probably speaks more of the culture than we ever could. You know, what you actually see manifested, that it's just taken place. So thank you so much for updating us. We've got, like I said, Q&A. Chris and Laura still around for Q&A. But yeah, thank you for updating people. And I hope that gives people a bit of an insight around Street Group. It allows you to make an informed choice around, you know, applying for the program. Also, a little bit of a cheat code for people on the call. Street Group are really open about their values. So I'd have a look at the Street Group's website. The values are on there. Again, it allows you to go, is that me? Is that my identity? Are they values I align with? And make that informed decision about the program as well. So I'll hand back to Millie and to round things up for us, Millie.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I feel like I've learned so many more new things, and it was amazing to hear the stories from Street Group and how you actually work. So yeah, like thank you both so much for sharing that with us. Now, if all of that sounds amazing and you're like, I definitely want to apply, what happens? How do you do it? Firstly, a couple of key dates. So the final date to submit your application is May the 13th, which is in about 4 weeks, so you do have a bit of time. The program itself starts on the 3rd of June and ends on the 28th, so it's basically 4 weeks, kind of like Monday to Friday in June. Now, how do you actually apply? Like, I want to make that very, very clear. So, firstly, all you need to do right now is submit the general application form. And you can find that in the chat. I believe one of our team members is going to post that now. You can also find it on our Tech Returners website if you're watching that later. But basically, the general application form is just asking you a couple of basic things around your previous technical experience, where you live, how many years of total technical experience you have, what kind of role you're looking for. It just helps us to know who you are a little bit more, and it also asks for your CV. That is it. It should take you 5 to 10 minutes to submit it. It is very, very easy. Now, once you submit that general application, you're basically now part of our Tech Returners talent pool. Okay. And so what I'm doing then is I'll review your application, and if I feel like you're someone who has the skill set that is suitable for the Street Group roles, I will then invite you to submit a motivations form. And in that motivations form, there are a couple of questions that are much more specific. So they're going to be things like, why do you want to work for Street Group? What skills can you bring to the team? Things like that. So in there, you'll be able to tell us a lot more about why you think you're right for that opportunity and why you want to work for Street. If you're successful at the motivation form stage, I will invite you to a 15-minute phone call, which is very much like an introduction call with a couple of questions extra that I want to ask about your biggest strengths, areas of development, and so on. So again, it's an opportunity to learn about you and you to ask any questions you might have. If you're successful at the intro call, then you're going to be invited to a final interview with myself and James. And this is a mixture of technical and behavioral questions. And when I say technical questions, this is not a technical task that you have to live code under pressure or anything like that. It is more about understanding how you prefer to work, what sort of projects you've worked on in the past, and just kind of like explaining your experience to us so we can really understand it in the best possible way. And finally, for those 2 people that are selected, you will be starting the program. So you're going to get an offer and all of the kind of surrounding materials for that. Now, because I know this is a lot of information, we have actually prepared a very handy step-by-step guide. So anyone who is invited to submit a motivations form, you'll receive that guide where it's going to be a lot of information about each of those stages, all of the questions that we're going to get asked. I love to be very transparent, very much like Street Group, about how we interview, why we're asking these questions and so on. So you'll have all the information that you need beforehand. And now I want to kind of say that as well, that if you happen to, let's say, not be selected for street group, or you start applying and then your application is not successful, please do not worry, because you're still remaining in our talent pipeline, and we may extend an invitation for any future program that might be a better fit for you. So in terms of next steps, yes, please, after the webinar, submit your general application form. And again, if you're a good fit for Street, I will invite you to that in the next couple of days. If not, that is fine, because we will be running other future programs as well, so it's helpful anyway. Now, what is even more important, if you do know someone who you think, oh, that would be great for my friend, this and that, or like your mom or classmate or anyone really that you know would be a good fit, please refer them to our program, because we very much rely on people like you to reach other returners. That's how a lot of our returners find out about us. And if this person is successful in our program, you're also going to receive a £100 Amazon voucher as well. So it is something that we do to say thank you. So I hope this is all clear. If you have any questions, now is a good time to ask them. Again, you can drop them in the chat, or you can drop them in the Q&A box. So I can see that Robin from our team has dropped the general application form as well. So please do that as well. Now, let's start firstly with the questions from the chat, because I think those are really important. Chris, Laura, can you share with us kind of how many days in the office are people expected to be? Because we mentioned about hybrid, but I think it would be really helpful just to clarify that for people.
Yeah, sorry, we were just saying, are you going to take this one? Yeah, so it differs throughout the company, but for our engineering departments, we say at least 1 day a week in the office, and then kind of 4 days a week you can work from home. What we say is if there's any particular reason we'd need you to come in for additional days, I don't know what that might be, but for the internal dev conference, for example, they're only one-offs here and there, so we ask you to come in and be flexible that way. But aside from that, yeah, 1 day a week in the office, and it'd be agreed with your team, so you'd be able to get together, see your team in person, build those relationships. So different teams do different days basically. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
I would just add to that, I'd say we don't drag people in just to kind of sit on Zoom calls in the office. I think we try to organise it with teams where they'll come in for either the sprint planning sessions or retrospectives, or they'll kind of come in to do more stuff that works better in person. So I think we are believers in that there is some stuff that is better face to face. I think particularly kind of if it's coaching or if there's team stuff to happen, trying to do a retro online is interesting. You can do it, but there's so much nicer in person. It's a big planning thing to do. Getting around a whiteboard is there's not much that replaces kind of just that in-person interaction for some things. But we don't want people to just come in to go, I could be at home doing exactly what I was doing, sat on my own. If we want to come in more, fantastic. We've got space, got the people. It's quite, I come in quite a bit, but it's for those bigger things rather than just come in for the sake of it.
Fabulous. Thank you both for answering that. And Chris, maybe that one is for you, but for the senior software engineer role, are they going to be leading people? Are they going to be managing people? Or is it more of a simply expert level professional rather than a team lead?
Yeah, so the senior software role isn't a leadership role. It's not a management position, but I would say my take on this is that you can do a lot of the things that you can do in I'm going to tell myself here, the fun parts of management in terms of mentoring and coaching and progression conversations. You can do that regardless whether you're a senior or a tech lead. You can have a mentorship conversation, you can coach, you can support people. And we actually have we're just rolling out individual tracks now, so you can kind of have essentially an individual contributor peer of a tech lead. So if you want to progress at the same level as that or even higher, then you can continue to do that while not being a manager. And that's really important that we have those options so that people kind of aren't forced into management to progress. So it's not that you have to now take on 3 people, otherwise you kind of hit a ceiling. But yeah, these roles aren't tech lead roles. These are purely IC, senior engineer roles or software engineer roles.
On that as well, I hope people spotted I think it speaks volumes of yourself, Chris, there, because you said the fun bit is developing people and mentoring of management. So that, again, those subtleties in culture, that's the bit you described as fun, is developing people. So I think that's an important thing to note as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other part, we had a couple of questions in the Q&A about like people's different circumstances. So can you just kind of like maybe clarify, do you require any specific amount of years of PHP experience, or is it more about like if someone has, like mentioned in here, self-learned PHP in a couple of different languages, but has past technical experience in other languages, are you open to that? Kind of like how flexible is the role itself?
I think we take a balanced view in it. So if you've kind of done some, like, a few years of commercial work in a language and you've self-taught PHP and picked it up, then yeah, we can have a conversation about it. It's a level of comfort and the level of like confidence you have in that stack to kind of get up and running and going. We've brought people in who've had zero PHP and trained them up. We've had people, I did 4 years of Java before I came up Street. So I was did PHP before then, but I've had to kind of like remember what I was doing in a different language when I came back into Street, which is quite nice. So we are supportive of it. I think there are a lot of there's a lot of kind of fundamentals that we look for in terms of both approaches to work and kind of technical skills. A lot of these things that you can translate across languages in terms of how you build services, how you kind of structure your code. These are things that transfer, but to be blunt, there are some kind of elements that you will need a bit of Laravel experience to be really successful, whether that's something you get during the 4 weeks, whether that's something you've had previously or self-taught. We use a lot of that stack, and I think sometimes it's not the language, it's the ecosystem that's hard to pick up. So yeah, I think some experience in building that sort of scale is useful, but we're open to conversations.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for clarifying that. I'm sure that's going to be very reassuring as well for people. One question maybe for you, Laura, like the £1,000 towards a holiday bit, can you tell us a bit more? Is it like a yearly bonus? How does it work?
Yeah, so it's not a yearly bonus, but it's on like first year, then 4th year, then 7th year, then 10th year. So every sort of 3 years thereafter. But it was introduced because one of our like very first employee, basically, she's called Catherine. She'd done like a really good job one year, and our co-founders wanted to give her a bonus. So they were like, "Oh, we're gonna give you like this £1,000 bonus." And she was like, "Oh, that's really good. I can spend it on my kids," which like all mums would just do. And they were like, "No, we wanted this for you, like for your hard work." So they decided to roll out this holiday bonus for everybody instead. And then obviously that's now been going for years and years and years. But basically you would book something to do with the holiday and then send the invoice to finance, and you would get £1,000 tax-free in your next payroll. Obviously most people don't just have £1,000 lying around that they can spend on a holiday and then claim back. But yeah, I just booked flights with mine, send the receipt for the flights, and then you get the rest of the money, all the money in your bank in the next payroll run.
Amazing. That sounds really fun and definitely something I wish more companies had as well to encourage
Yeah,
people
you especially, Miller.
Yeah, well, yeah, like I do love a good holiday or a good trip somewhere, so yeah, would definitely benefit from that. And then like there was a question around like, do we have any programs for Java developers? Please stay tuned because we will be releasing kind of a program for Java devs as well a little bit later on in the month. So stay tuned to that. I think these are all the questions that I can see in both the Q&A and in the chat. So I think that's it. Like if anyone has any final questions, please drop them now. And if not, thank you so much everyone for attending live. If you're here, if you're watching the replay, I hope you've enjoyed it as well. Please do submit your applications. And again, if you're right for this program, fantastic. You'll hear back from us quite soon. And if not, again, we are really, really happy to have you as part of our Tech Returners community, and we'll be reaching out with any aligned opportunities for you as well. So thank you very much for that. And yeah, I hope you have an amazing day. Thank you both, Laura and Chris, and thank you, James, as well for being here.